Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. Of course, I'm not Brien Hanley. Neither is he. Back behind me, that's dude. Brien is struggling. That dental work ended up into a severe infection, so he's going to be off some this week, if not all week. So we will muster on without him, and you're going to see a lot of me probably. That doesn't work out well for you, but you're here for the Big 12 football, and that's what's really important as we wrap up another weekend of bizarre Big 12 football. The Big 12 is bashing each other's heads in to the point where now people are wondering, will the Big 12 get a bye in the bracket, or will Boise State steal the fourth bye from the Big 12 because they will be the higher ranked team, the Big 12 championship champion against the Boise champion? It's a mess, but it's all because of what's happening on the field. And of course, when we get to that, you probably have to start with Provo, Utah, where everything has been in BYU's favor this year. Every break has seemingly bounced the Cougars' way. And that changed on Saturday night. And, you know, what's ironic about it is every bounce seemed to go the wrong way for Kansas most of this season. A really talented KU team we expected to be near the top of the conference wandered into Provo for a night game. You know how that works. They turn into vampires, and they take the life right out of you. That's not how it turned out. Kansas moves to 4-6 overall and 3-4 in the conference by beating previously unbeaten BYU. They were ranked sixth at the time. They've now got a loss, 17-13. And how did this come to pass? Well, a break went against BYU in a big way as Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels pooch punted early in the fourth quarter to try to pin BYU back. And the result was the ball hit a BYU player. It was a muffed punt recovered by Kansas at the 3. One touchdown later, they're up 17-13. And now something completely different from what we've seen in the past also occurred. The Kansas defense stood up and took charge and kept BYU's offense contained to secure that 17-13 victory. And I just got to say this. I think Kansas is playing as well as anyone in the conference after an absolutely awful, just kind of tormenting start to the season. If they didn't have bad luck, they'd have no luck at all. They kept throwing interceptions and making key mistakes and losing one-score games in the fourth quarter. That's over. Now Kansas has beaten back-to-back teams in the first time in a long time, back-to-back ranked teams, beating Iowa State last week and BYU this week. Coach Lance Leipold has his Jayhawks sailing right into Kansas City, their temporary home field at Arrowhead Stadium, where they will take on Colorado later on this upcoming Saturday. So that is going to be a huge game. Another significant game in the pecking order of this conference was Arizona State went into Manhattan, Kansas, and did what not many teams do. They won, and they handled the Wildcats pretty easily. Of course, this was a game I covered for 24/7 Sports, and it was a kind of strange performance by Kansas State, who looked disinterested, but Arizona State didn't. They were clearly the better team, the more involved team in this game throughout the entire contest, and just the skill set that Arizona State puts on the field. I don't think we fully appreciate the talent they have. Well, first of all, freshman quarterback Sam Leavitt is just a great manager. And before the game, it was pointed out by Kansas State coach Chris Kleiman that Sam Leavitt just takes care of stuff. I mean, he when he makes a decision, he's going to do it. There's no hesitation whether it's to throw or run. He showed that again, completing 21 of 34 passes for 275 yards. Kansas State did a decent job on Cam Scatteraboo. That's what's really interesting. They held him to under 3 yards a carry. That's 25 rushes for 73 yards, but it was Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver transfer for the Sun Devils, absolutely lit up the Wildcats. They targeted him numerous times this game. He had 12 receptions for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns, and what a performance by him. Kansas State kind of stirred to life in that second half and found a way to get some points on the board, but it wasn't nearly enough as the Sun Devils stay heavily in touch with this Big 12 race now because they've got their own huge game as they will return home to play host to, that's right, BYU. And all of a sudden, Arizona State has what K-State thought would be them is Arizona State. They stole K-State's season and now are marching forward with it, as Kansas State thought they'd be heading down the home stretch with 2 games to win to get to the Big 12 title game. Well, the Sun Devils are in a similar position, although they too need to get some help with Colorado, because the Sun Devils are 5-2 overall in the conference, 8-2 overall. But they need one more loss for Colorado to clear the way, or BYU, I guess. So that's a good point. I just said that and realized if they beat BYU, they're in the championship game. So good for the Sun Devils. Kenny Dillingham just knocking it out of the park in season 2. Next up, let's go back to that Friday night game, as Houston, full of itself and thinking that maybe it's got it going now after some nice wins over the last month or so. They go out to Arizona and, well, look, these Wildcats have been playing well for a while, and we didn't know what to think of them. We didn't know what to say about them because they didn't fit what we expected. Well, Arizona played a pretty good football game. Noah Fafita threw a couple touchdown passes. They got their running game going well enough. Their receiving game was good enough, as they just totally stifled Houston's offense with some great defense, cruising to a 27-3 victory. They were up 27-3 at the end of the third quarter. So a boring fourth quarter for all involved, because they simply couldn't come back from that deficit, as Arizona gets a really nice win for them to move to 2-5 in the conference after such a frustrating season. Houston's now 3-4. Houston, another surprise team in this conference. Colorado had a little more problems with Utah than maybe what we thought, but then they opened it up at the end, absolutely toasting the Utes 49-24. Colorado is playing as the best team in the conference right now. They're 8-2 overall, 6-1 in conference play. Of course, Nebraska got them early in the season. I'd like to see those two teams play now. I think the result would be radically different, as Colorado really is feeling itself, sensing that it can make a run at the Big 12 title, because its pathway now belongs to them. If they can simply stay the course and win a bunch of games here, win 2 more games in a conference title, they'll be in the playoffs. And that would be an absolutely remarkable story for Coach Deion Sanders and his Buffaloes. Let's look at some of the stats here from this game, as they did a nice job. I thought Utah's offense showed life for the first time in a while, as Isaac Wilson kind of settled in for the first time as the quarterback there, going 21-40 for 236 yards. As the 3 interceptions were the problem. A young quarterback and still learning his trade. It's got to get better. Shadur Sanders was his magical self, 30-41 for 3 touchdowns. He also had an interception. But when you look at everyone else on the field, there was just enough stats provided. He threw around the ball quite a bit, and it was an impressive performance, because once they flipped the switch again in the fourth quarter, they stopped cruising and flipped the switch. It really looked like a complete team. And of course, Travis Hunter is just out of this world, as a two-way threat, and how he can change a game in both directions is absolutely unbelievable. Now let's get to Cincinnati and Iowa State. I thought this would be a closer game. Cincinnati going into Manhattan, Kansas this weekend, but headed to Iowa State as they take a tour of the former Big 12 North, apparently. And look, Iowa State commanded this game pretty much from the third quarter on. It was 10-10 at halftime, and then Iowa State wins 34-17 as they poured it on. Rocco Becht was really good, 24-33, 1 touchdown, averaged 7 yards a pass, a completion. They had 152 yards rushing. They just were really solid throughout the day. A number of receivers, 3 different receivers had 6 catches. And Iowa State looked again like the team they had been before, losing back-to-back games in this conference and finding themselves now in a dogfight to try to be that second team in the Big 12 championship. They are 8-2 overall and 5-2. And of course, Cincinnati raises its record to 5-5 and 3-4. And as I mentioned, they're trying to get bowl eligible, and they start this weekend with the next effort in Manhattan, Kansas. The final game was one that I made a silly wager on, and it clearly hit the over before halftime, as this turned into a shootout. Baylor at West Virginia. It got wacky. It was 35-28 at halftime in Baylor's favor, and the Bears win on the road 49-35. This takes West Virginia out of the main race for the Big 12. They're now in that pocket of 4-3 teams, along with some other pretty good teams like Tech and TCU and Kansas State. But they need a lot of help to get to the championship game. Too much help to really discuss openly, because while there are scenarios here where BYU is also at 4-3, Baylor is also at 4-3, where the Bears and the Wildcats of Kansas State could end up playing with 3 losses. I'm not getting into that. I think the championship game will be decided by teams that have 2 or fewer losses at this point of the season, and we will see how everything pans out. But this conference, it's insane. It's nuts. It makes no sense. Baylor's now 6-4 overall, 4-3 in the conference. West Virginia is 5-5 and 4-3, and the Mountaineers are just trying to find enough wins in the conference to get to a bowl game after losing to Penn State and Pitt in the non-conference. They go to UCF they have UCF coming in to Morgantown, followed by a road trip to Tech. So there's a couple games that maybe they could get that done. We'll see. But another good win for Baylor, and it's just really impressed me what Dave Aranda has been able to do now with his Bears. That is their 4th straight win. That is their 4th straight win. They have beaten Tech. They have beaten Oklahoma State. They got by TCU, and now West Virginia. They go to Houston, and then they play Kansas in Kansas City. They go to Houston, and then they will play Kansas at home in Waco to close the season. So that game could have a lot of meaning, because Baylor at 6-4 is bowl eligible now, which is absolutely incredible. But now they can get a little bit more wealthy, as they can get up to an 8-win season. And after the way the Bears started, that was impossible to predict. Now, it's going to be an interesting slate of games this weekend around the Big 12. I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these games have. Hopefully we'll have a couple of spotlights on the key games this week, if Big B can help out, and maybe I'll be able to pull it all off despite having all full slate of work to do with my Kansas State coverage. We will see. We will effort through this. I will have Ryan Gilbert filling in for me as I fill in for Big B on tomorrow's rankings show. There'll still be Big B's rankings. It'll just be me babbling. On top of the schedule this weekend is, as I've mentioned, an incredible 2:30 slate. As at 2:30 Central Time, that's for me here at 2:30 Central Time, BYU goes to Arizona State. A couple teams in contention. As I said, Arizona State, if they beat BYU, they're right there in the race to go to Arlington. And Colorado, well, they could be the next victim of the Kansas Jayhawks. They've impacted this Big 12 race in a mighty way over the last 2 weeks with wins over Iowa State. And BYU, why stop now? They're going to try to tee up Colorado. They have to beat Colorado and Baylor to end the season to make it to a bowl game. So Kansas is playing really good football. But right now, for me, this is a game between the top 2 teams in the conference. Those games hopefully will be profiled later this week with a spotlight edition. And Big B has got another appointment with his dentist to try to get that infection better under control in the middle of the week. We'll see how he's feeling. Big B, hang in there. I hope I did you proud. I babbled as best I can. You're really good at this one-man show stuff, and I'm just a guy talking. And I forgot to say at the top of the show, make sure you're liking and subscribing to this channel. Make sure anything you do to interact, as dudes decided to participate, interact with this show can help us build the network even further, build this channel out. And it is much appreciated. And we will be back tomorrow with more Big 12 Insiders. I'm Fitz. Take care of yourself.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.